Man, oh man, oh man. Mr. Greg Medford. In your words, it's been 5 years. I think it's been about 3, and I haven't talked about you really at all since then. But apparently you're still thinking about me, which at this point in time is getting a little bit weird. But for one last time, let's talk about it. So, Mr. Medford's video was filled with a whole bunch of half-truths and whole lies. I am not going to operate off of the same principle. So first, to start things off right, the universe always has an equal and opposite reaction. For every positive, there is a negative. For every negative, there's a positive. And this situation is no exception. So first and foremost, Greg Medford, let's talk about the positives. Your customer service in the past, I've heard some kind of horror stories recently, but in the past, from my personal firsthand experience, has been absolutely fantastic. I've also heard multiple different times, multiple different people, as well as some firsthand experiences about how you went above and beyond to help someone, just in terms of just life in general, just be a good dude. To be clear, they were part of the Medford fam, so it's a little cult, but you know, credit where credit is due. Also, I like some Medford knives. Now, all of my Medfords are modified. I do not think they are good enough stock, but I do think they are in a fantastic platform for modification. Ugh. So that's the positive. As far as the negative, we're going to do this in 3 little bursts. He talked about Dirk Wierning, me, and Nick Shabazz. Well, no, Nick Shabazz and then me. So my personal thing is going to be the very last thing in this video. If you want to watch that, I guess, then fast forward. If not, first and foremost, let's talk about Dirk Wierning. Now, his beef with Dirk is that he released some videos disassembling the Medfords. Basically just showing them, taking them apart, showing them all the different washers and everything else, which originally is what started off this whole drama with Medford Knife and Tool using like 5 or 6 washers, like 3 on one side, 2 on the other, yada, yada, yada. Supposedly the ones nowadays no longer use that. They're custom fit washers. So it's just 1 on each side or bearings on some models. But back in the day, that was the original problem. Medford then reached out, to be clear, Greg Medford himself reached out to Dirk and asked him to remove the video, which in of itself is very anti-consumer, and is also a violation of the Customer Protection Act, the Fair Review Act, which is not sure if it's out here in North Carolina, but definitely one in California, which is where Dirk is currently at. Number of different protections in place, right, for you to be able to review products fairly and without bias and without having, you know, basically being threatened or having type of consequences from the maker themselves or the business. So in of itself, right, already shady. Now, there's a lot of history that I don't want to paraphrase as I am totally going to get it wrong. So very long story short, Dirk Wierning doesn't like Greg Medford for a plethora of different reasons. Some things I've heard secondhand that make it sound really, really bad in regards to what he did to Dirk. That's secondhand information. I'm not going to address it here, but if you want to look on the groups and everything else, it's out there. The information is out there for you to be able to watch and check out yourself. But basically, they don't like each other. Greg Medford is like, well, I've sent you messages. I've called you. Why don't you call me back? And first and foremost, Dirk Wierning's a grown-ass man, Greg. He doesn't need to call you back, and he also doesn't really need a reason. And you being like, call me back is, you know, kind of like a petulant child who got dumped on prom. It's kind of what it reminds me of, man. Just somebody just really in their feelings. You're such a supposedly tough guy about integrity and, you know, I'll take on anybody, yada, yada, yada. That's kind of some bitch shit. Greg Medford also deliberately edited his video because originally he mentioned Dirk Wierning by name. Then he got some backlash for that. And then he backpedaled because that's also who Greg Medford is as a person, right? He has absolutely no integrity and no courage to stand behind his beliefs. He talks a very, very big game, but he really doesn't back any of it up, unfortunately. So in regards to the Dirk Weirning thing, that chapter is closed. There's a lot more, to be clear, in that thing, but I just don't want to speak about it in the wrong way, so I'm just not going to talk about it anymore, because everything else is, paraphrasing and secondhand information. That's the slippery slope. Now, as far as the whole Nick Shabazz thing, to be clear, I have not talked to Nick Shabazz. Nick Shabazz is pretty known for not wanting drama, so if I did talk to him, he would just tell me to leave it alone, so I did not bother to reach out. However, in that video, Greg openly admits to Nick Shabazz having problems with his products, basically voicing his own personal opinion as a reviewer. And Greg Medford then brags and laughs about, quote, having information on him, reaching out, and then basically, not basically, in no uncertain terms, threatening to expose him. Basically saying, you don't like my products, you have something bad to say about my products, then I'm going to expose you. So he threatened this man because he didn't like his knives and the things that he was trying to sell. Are you beginning to see a theme here, folks? You don't like Medford knife and tool, you get threatened. Now, I don't know how much of this part is true, because when I released my Medford video, I had a whole bunch of hate and people saying that Greg told me to fuck you up. Greg told me to make you shut up. Greg told me to come see you at Blade Show. Greg said this, Greg said that. I do not know if any of that is true. It could just be fanboys basically being like, hey, I'm going to go fuck you up, but I'm doing it in Greg's name, which just seems weird. But I have also been threatened a whole bunch of different times, though never directly, which is also kind of contrary to what Greg said in that video, because supposedly he reached out to me, which never happened. Now, in regards to what happened with the whole Nick Shabazz thing, those videos have since been removed, and if you actually notice and go back in time using the Wayback Machine and everything else, you can see a very, very sudden shift in how Nick Shabazz talked about the brand, from where he was threatened before to where he was threatened after. It's just inherently shady and really, really not okay. Now, let's speak about me as a person. First and foremost, I made a relatively long comment on Greg's live stream, because on that live stream, he mentioned me directly. To be clear, not by name. He does not mention anybody by name. He's too much of a goddamn coward, and if he does, he backpedals and edits the video. It is a live video using the YouTube algorithms and everything else, and the YouTube subsystems. You can edit the video after you post it. Some folks don't know that. You can do that. It's actually very, very easy. But so he talked about the nerdy, I forgot his exact words, like ginger bitch or some other shit like that. Yeah, I'm a ginger. Doesn't bother me any, man. And more often than not, girls love the red hair, so I'm cool with it. But a little bit off topic, but I made a comment on it, basically talking about, well, let's cut that here. If you go onto the actual community page on my channel, I screenshotted the actual comment because, long story short, Greg Medford never responded to that comment, and in fact, he hid it, which means you can hit the little three tab button or whatever if you happen to have a YouTube channel, and you can hit mute user, hide comment, or remove. He did not remove it because that would make a pretty big statement in regards to being a fucking coward. What he did do is try to play some kind of slick shit, so to speak, and hide it to where I wouldn't know about it, but nobody else could actually see it. Again, are you starting to see a theme? Mr. Freedom, Mr. Integrity, Mr. All about the business, wanting all the different smoke, not afraid of nobody. He keeps doing things that, they're kind of cowardly, right? So, I also made a video about Greg Medford a couple of years back. He said 5 years. I think it's been more like 3. And in that video, I called him, quote, a racist piece of shit. And I'm going to do a very brief paraphrase in regards to why I said that. A little more deep dive than the actual video. I highly encourage you guys, if you are curious, to hop on Blade forums, to hop on Reddit, to hop on different Facebook groups and everything else, and to be able to look at the stuff firsthand, because this is a long history of him saying anti-Semitic remarks, of him saying the N-word, of him calling people, quote, the jungle people for African-American descent. This is not new. He tries very, very hard to hide these things. Most of these things have since been deleted or reported, but again, we have technology nowadays to where you can specifically look up incidences and see for yourself. I highly encourage all of you to do so because the information is out there. And Greg likes to tell stories. He likes to lie. He likes to talk a really big game, which was probably fine back in the day. But nowadays, you hop on a live stream, that shit is tracked, and we can watch it forever. You hop on a video, even if you delete the video, that shit is archived and you can watch it forever. Doesn't matter if you edit it, doesn't matter anything. There's technology out there, as I'm sure you guys are well aware, that can recover all of these things. The technology is free of charge and relatively easy to use, and I highly encourage everyone to do so, to make your own conclusions, because what I have to say here is my own personal opinion. I encourage all of you to make your own. Oh God, my fucking throat is so dry. I encourage all you guys to make your own personal opinions, right? So, back in, not sure of the year, I believe it was my second Blade show. I think it was also Greg's second Blade show. It might have been his third, though. He had already started his company. He was already relatively established. He had moderate success, but it was definitely getting much, much bigger. We had a conversation to where it started off with him trying to sell me a product because I walked by his case. I thought some of the knives were pretty cool. And it quickly turned into politics, talking about the Chinese and all sorts of different stuff, called them, quote, slant-eyed gooks. Not particularly okay. You know, his words, not mine. And a number of other different types of things. Then he spoke about them almost being as worse as the, quote, jungle people, always trying to steal things and shoot each other. Talk about African people of African-American descent, obviously. He used the N-word in general conversation in regards to everyone, and also in regards to very specific people. Which for me is a no in certain terms. You're a racist if you do something like that. That word is designed to disparage an entire people. If you use it, you're a piece of shit. Simple as that. If you disagree, kindly unsubscribe, because I have love for all of you, but if you are racist, I don't have respect for you whatsoever. I don't particularly want you here. But fast forward several years, 2019, 2018, something like that. There's a company called EDC Specialties. You can find them on Instagram. They have something called a Medford Lounge they created. And on the christening of that Medford Lounge, Greg Medford himself showed up. Not familiar with the exact date, but with that information, you can very easily find it. Now, there was also another man that happened to be there. That man was with Greg almost the entire time. At one point in time, that man stepped outside, and there was just me and one other person in the actual Medford Lounge. Greg is sitting in one of the little chairs, and I'm actually on the actual physical wall itself, picking up knives, handling them. And he's basically trying to do a sales pitch. And the sales pitch turns from being just, you know, an actual sales pitch to a heavy rally against the Chinese people, talking about communism and everything else, which, you know, to be fair, like, they're our enemies. I'm a U.S. citizen. They don't like us. We don't like them. It is what it is. But talking about the Asian people and Chinese people, period, in that type of way, and not talking about geographical location, it starts to get really, really shady, and let's face it here, racist. But it does get worse. So as the conversation persists, he makes a passing comment about that some of the areas over here are mighty dark, in his words, and filled with jungle people. At this point, I'm kind of trying to ignore him. I'm just kind of focusing on the knives and everything else. I'm not saying anything back one way or the other. At this comment, the person that was also in the room then proceeds to walk out of the room because obviously he's just fucking had it. And he was talking to me directly, so guys, I figured he wasn't part of the conversation, we should just walk the fuck out. Greg continues on, drops the N-word several times, once again in general conversation, referring to individuals as well as everybody as a whole, because he just likes to use that word period for whatever asinine Jim Crow era bullshit reason. But that is Greg in a nutshell. And at a certain point in time, after about 5 minutes of this rhetoric, I turned around and said as politely as I possibly could that I'm not sure where you come from, Greg, but out here, if the wrong person hears you say that, you're not going to fucking make it home tonight, dog. Which he gave me a weird look, not a confrontational look, but kind of a quizzical look, nodded his head and said understood, and proceeded to not say shit else. In which case, I grabbed a knife, not a Medford, and I went up to the counter, purchased my knife, went home with my girl. And that was the end of the actual day. So, in closing, let's go a little bit deeper than that. There's also a man on on Facebook. He's actually one of the admins for the Medford Night Aficionado group named Scott Miller. Scott Miller and Greg serve together. He says that they are friends, though some of the conversations I've heard doesn't sound very friendly. Now, Scott Miller is also somebody that actually has integrity, unlike Mr. Greg Medford. And he has said things to me about conversations in regards to them that I'm sure he will also say to you, because he doesn't have, a problem with cowardice. And that is that Greg Medford, as I've already said, casually says the N-word in conversation in regards to individuals as well as just people as a whole. Now, in Scott's word, he calls him a dinosaur, doesn't necessarily hate anyone, or he hates everyone, but it's not based on some type of individual thing that he dislikes that he uses the word. Nobody likes that he uses the word, but Greg is Greg, and Greg won't change. Now, that is definitely one side. My side is that if you use a word which was specifically designed to disparage an entire people, that is the purpose. You could argue, oh, well, it means ignorant. Well, it means ignorant because of the color of somebody's skin, so it's still disparaging an entire people, and obviously it digs a lot deeper than that. If you use that word to describe someone of African American descent or to describe somebody, period, in my humble opinion, you are a racist piece of shit, and there is no middle ground. And in my humble opinion, racism is the single most illogical, dumb fucking thing to be, especially nowadays when there is all this knowledge at your fingertips at any point in time. You can just Google something and be enlightened. I'm a humble believer, right, that the cure for racism is information. The more information you have, the more you can make an objective, unbiased opinion, and the more the whole rhetoric starts to fall apart. So even though Greg has all this information at his fingers, even though Greg has all this firsthand life experience, he still willfully chooses to call people that name. In no uncertain terms, in my humble opinion, and I'm sure in yours as well, that makes Greg Medford a racist piece of shit. It also makes him wholeheartedly anti-consumer, because if you dislike his products, he will threaten you directly. I've also heard some horror stories very recently, both from employees and ex-employees, about the many, many shady things he does, messing with people's bottom lines, taking away money, taking away credit, taking away all sorts of different things. These are, again, all secondhand accounts, and I don't play that he said, she said bullshit, unlike Mr. Greg Medford. Mr. Greg Medford also in one of his videos talked about me and him formerly being friends, and that, quote, I betrayed him. Greg, this is directly talking to you because you're insecure enough to watch this video from my little small insignificant ass, because you just have to know what people are saying about you. We have never been friends. We have talked several different times over the years. I've looked the way I look now. I've been 300 and almost 60 pounds, a lot muscle, but also a lot of fat, with a bald head and a big beard. I tend to change the way I look on a regular basis. The last 5 years have been the most consistent I've ever looked in my entire life. So in the last 5 years, personally, we've met several times. Furthermore, I was just at Blade Show. And you saw me and didn't say a fucking word to me. But on that video and in other messages I've seen, supposedly you've reached out firsthand and made comments, made threats, and quote, I backed down. Greg, you have never talked to me before in regards to any of this shit. And we've met up in person multiple different times since that original video was released. And every single time you either A, wave your hand, smile and be polite, or you say exactly dick and shit to me. Why are you lying to these folks? Now, I can sit there and say, oh, well, I punked him and he wouldn't want to fight me, but none of these things happened. What really happened is that we just did not necessarily interact at all. But you did see me, and you did say exactly jack and shit. So why are you lying? What purpose does any of that serve? But I'm starting to get a little riled up at this point in time. You can't tell me literally clenching my hand so tight I'm starting to cramp. And I don't want to put a whole bunch of negativity out there. So unless Greg Medford directly responds to this video, this is going to be the last video I make in regards to Greg Medford. Now, I still love these knives. I can personally separate the man from the maker, the knife from the maker, yada, yada, yada. Greg Medford employs about 50 people. A lot of them I know. He doesn't know that I know them, but a lot of them I know. A lot of them are good folks, and a lot of them I actually have a lot of respect for. So I will continue to buy the products. I will continue to talk about their own personal work. However, my own personal, very, let's be honest here, petty way of kind of sticking it to the man is that I do not buy anything directly from Medford Knife and Tool. What I do is I buy from secondary market, normally used beaters, sometimes brand new, doesn't particularly matter, but always from the secondary market. And then I go about getting them modified. So they are the baseline platform of a Medford knife, but I do not think Medford knives are frankly good enough as they are. They all have a little bit of problems here and there. Still solid products, but could definitely be better. And through modification, they do become much, much better. So I do not give Greg Medford any direct money. Never have, never will, ever since that very first show when he showed his true colors. I've never bought a single product direct from a dealer, nor will I ever. However, I do buy from the secondary market, which is mostly because of Greg Medford's political views and how aggressive and hateful he is. His secondary market on his knives are frankly atrocious. This is a $600 knife. I paid like $230 for it. I have a Praetorian tie, which retails for $1,500, and I paid $5 for. I could go on. But as always, folks, please, more than anything else, make your own personal opinions. If you love Greg Medford, I don't hate you. I don't dislike you. If you think Greg Medford is a good person, that you agree with his racist ideology, I still don't hate you, but I do not respect you at all, and please kindly unsubscribe. With all that being said, if you just like the knives, or if you just like the man in certain doses and certain political viewpoints, or if you had no idea that he did all these very, very shady, anti-Semitic, anti-consumer, and then straight up racist things, then whole different story. But please make your own personal decisions. Do research. I'm giving you one piece of a much larger story. I promise you there is a lot more out there. And some of those things are really, really despicable and will have genuine consequences. But they didn't happen to me directly. And again, I don't want to speak on secondhand information in this video besides just the most brief of touching points. But the information is out there. By all means, do your research. Stay informed. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And more than anything else, man, just thank you. I appreciate you guys. As always, folks, I love you all once again. Take care. And this is a 24-minute video. Holy shit. I am sorry. I ramble too fucking much.